day 3. So, guys, if you remember, we were discussing about a software testing 2023. So, I'm making a running notes on a daily basis, guys. So, here from a date, below that, the content will be there. So, if you remember, in the previous class, we started discussing about a software testing. What is the software testing? Software testing is a process of verification and a validation. And again, we studied that verification means are we developing the right product or not? Right? Are we developing the right product or not? At the time of a development, if at all you are cross-checking it, whether we are developing a right thing or not, which we call it as a verification. And the same way, the validation means whether the developed product is right or not, right? So whatever the development is completed, whether it is right or not, we need to cross check it. Ideally, in the real world, this verification will be handled by everyone who is working in a project, everyone who is working for the project, no matter whomsoever is, they can use this verification, they can do this verification. And who will be doing this validation? Only the developers and testers does this validation. Who are doing this? The developers and the testers. So our major role of certifying whether the developed application is working as per the customer needs or not will fall under the validation itself. So we as a testers in the real world do this particular validation only. Okay, fine. So verification means a cross-checking, right? This verification was further classified into two types. One is a reviews and another is walkthroughs. Okay, a review, examining or cross-checking project related works. Whichever the project related works are there, if at all you are cross-checking those project related works, we treat it as a review. Review itself means you are just cross-checking that project related works itself. Okay, fine. And then a walkthrough. See, basically, assume that, consider this example. Surendra is working as a QA tester or a manual tester for a project from almost 2 years. Okay, and Monica has joined this particular project as a manual tester today. So, as we both are a manual testers, Surendra will share an overview on a project. Okay, he will give a knowledge transfer on the project basically to the new resource. Who will be doing that? A person who has already having some experience. He will be dealing that particular activity. So Surendra will share his knowledge to Monica about the project. What exactly they have implemented from the past 2 years, what are all the major chunks that were done, and how it's gonna work, everything what they have implemented so far, all those details will be shared to, okay, all those details will be shared to Monica from Surendra, which we call it as a walkthrough or a knowledge transfer sessions. So, okay, it's a walkthrough or a knowledge transfer session. A person who is having a good demand or a knowledge on a particular subject, he will be sharing his knowledge. Okay, he will be sharing his knowledge to the peers who don't have a much knowledge on that particular domain, which itself we call it as a walkthroughs. Then, what is a review then? Right, we should know what exactly this review does. In a review, examining or cross-checking the project related works, right? See, basically, assume that I'm a tester, guys. Okay, ideally, though we don't know anything about the further activities, the tester create a test cases, right? We as a tester will create a test cases. Once we drafted those cases, okay, if we are cross-checking whether we covered all the features or not, which we call it as a review itself. Okay, which itself is called as a review, guys. Okay, perfectly all right. So the ultimate point here is a review. It means that we are doing something, and at the same time, if at all you are cross-checking it, whether it is up to the mark or not, or are we meeting the desired guidelines or not, which itself we call it as a reviews in the real world. Okay, and there are multiple types of reviews that we have. Okay, so the first review is a formal review, and the second one is an informal review. The next one is a code review, and the next one is an management review. So these are the various types of reviews that we have: the formal review, the informal review, code review, and as well as a management review. So what exactly this formal review is? If a review is conducted with a pre-plan, systematic procedure followed by proper documentation. If a review is conducted with a pre-plan, systematic procedure followed by a proper documentation, we call it as a formal review. We are calling it as a formal review, guys. That itself we treat it as a formal review. Okay, perfect. Done the deal. And then the next thing that we need to consider here is then Surendra, what is an informal review then? Right. If we know about a formal review, then what exactly an informal review is? It's a quite opposite to that. If a review is conducted without a pre-plan, without following any procedures, and without any proper documentation, we call that particular review as an informal review. But what is an example of this formal review? First of all, we should know what is the best example of this formal review is. So the example for this formal review is year-end financial audits. So guys, if you remember, every year for any firm or any company, there are some financial audits they will do, right? So what they will be doing, this auditor will come on a specified time and he will check all the documents. There are some checklist what he's gonna check. And if there is something missing, he will make a note of that and he will ask us to properly submit that document. Okay, properly submit that document, which itself we call it as, okay, which itself we call it as a formal review. So there is a pre-plan basically. In that pre-plan, so every year this review will be conducted in the month of June. In the month of June, I will check all these documents. If something is missing from this document, I will make a note of it and you need to submit those documents. That's it. That's what the ultimate point here with respect to this particular stuff. Got it? Cool. Done the deal. And then the next point that I need to consider here is informal review. If a review is conducted without a plan, systematic procedure, and and without a documentation, we call it as an informal review. So there is nothing else is there. So basically they will be reviewing it on a high level. Okay, of course they will be doing it in detail, but they will not maintain any documentation or they will not do any other stuff, which we call it as an informal review. Code reviews. See, basically I am a developer, I prepared some code, and other developer, if I ask him to cross check whether my code is meeting all the standards or not, Okay, whether my code is meeting all the standards or not. See, if you are a developer, there are certain coding standards that you need to follow, whether my code is meeting all those standards or not. If at all you are cross checking that, which we call it as a code review. So it means one developer will prepare the code and another developer will cross check that piece of a code, which we call it as a code review. And a management reviews. These reviews are conducted by a managers or a higher level basically. The ultimate objective is we have a committed some deadlines, whether we are on track with those deadlines or not. Whether we are on a track with those deadlines or not. Are we meeting those deadlines or not? If something is missing, how can we achieve those deadlines? If at all I am adding a couple of resources, can I achieve my deadline or not? All those things would be considered as part of these management reviews. These management reviews are conducted by the manager, and their ultimate objective is to make sure that this application is delivered to the customer on a time, and whatever the timelines they have committed, everything should be up to the date. That's what it's gonna say. Am I clear for you guys with all the four reviews, or any doubts on this one? Everyone clear? Feel free to let me know if at all you have any questions. Okay, perfect. So, yeah, good enough. Considering your silence as a good enough. Done. Then,
Actually, formal review and management review are maximum same, na?
no, no. So, in the formal review, basically, okay, so there is a pre plan. Okay, and the management reviews are completely considered for the deliverables itself. But the formal reviews would be considered for the documentation that we were preparing, some audits that we're conducting on a project, and bunch of things that fall under a formal review. But the management review will strictly talk about the deliverables itself. So we are planning to, or we have given a deadline to the customer that we will complete on this time, whether it is doing or not, whether we were delivering or not. If for suppose we plan with the three resources and we have only two resources, do I need to increase the resources? Such kind of a planning will be handled as part of these management reviews. But the formal review objective is completely different. Got it?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, perfect. Perfectly all right. Then the next thing that we need to consider here is after the reviews, okay, once the verification is done. Inside the verification, there is a review, and inside the review, there are a multiple subcategories or types we have studied. And now there is a walkthrough that we have already studied. Now, the next thing that we need to consider here is about a validation. As part of a validation, whether the developed product is working as per the customer needs or not. Whatever the validation developers are doing, we call it as a white box testing. So this white box testing the developers does. The black box testing testers does. Immediately, a question that comes in our mind. So Surendra, developers are already doing this testing on that particular application. Why again a tester is needed to test that particular application? So here, the objective of a developer and the tester is differ. In a white box testing, the developer objective is to check whether they have 100% code coverage or not. Okay, and they will check whether their code is working on a high level or not. That's it. They will check only these things itself. But we as a tester needs to check from a customer perspective. Okay, from a customer perspective, whatever the requirements asked by customer, whether all those things got fulfilled or not. whether all those requirements got fulfilled or not. Whatever the customer asked us, whether everything is fulfilled or not, we as a testers need to do. So it means testing conducted on the application by the testers to ensure 100% requirement coverage. So, what is the ultimate objective of this black box testing? Whether all the requirements were covered or not would be considered as part of this black box testing. Then a white box testing testing conducted on the source code by the developers to ensure 100% code coverage. So why they are doing this particular activity? To check whether they have a code coverage for all those features or not. To cross check that particular thing, we are using this particular white box testing. Okay, we are using this particular white box testing for that particular purpose. Okay, their objectives are differ. So definitely we as a testers needs to do this particular black box testing. Okay, developer objective itself is to check whether their code is working or not, or whether they have created their code for this particular requirement or not. But this requirement is fulfilling or not, the customer asked us to validate these things. Whether it is working or not, this guy will not check it. That will be taken care from a tester perspective itself. And another thing, what exactly the tester does is the tester does both positive, positive, and a negative testing on the application. Here, the positive testing and a negative testing. These are the two critical things that we need to know. Okay, so let me tell you a simple example for that. Okay, assume that Surendra is having a car driving school, guys. Surendra is having a car driving school, and maybe Sneha, joined in my training institute to learn car driving. Okay, to learn car driving. So the instructions I have a given to Sneha are, in order to move the car, instructions to move car are, the first one is put on the key. Okay, press the clutch, put on the gear. Okay, first of all, put on the key, start the engine. Right, engine should be start. Press the clutch, put on the gear, slowly release the clutch, and observe the car will move. Okay, observe the car will move basically. Okay, observe the car will move. That's the thing, guys. Okay, so the point out over here is, so Surendra has given these instructions to Sneha that in order to move your car, you need to do all these activities. Okay, all these activities. Okay, perfect. Okay, and consider that what is a positive testing here? If Sneha does all the steps whichever I mentioned, then it's a positive testing. Then it's a positive testing. Then what is a negative testing in this area? First suppose, okay, first suppose, excuse me, if she didn't press the clutch and check whether car is moving or not. And the another negative testing might be without starting the engine, how it works. Another negative testing might be without releasing the clutch, whether car is moving or not. Like this, If at all we are cross checking in that particular area, which we treat it as a negative testing. This whole process, we treat it as a negative testing, guys. Okay, this whole process, we treat it as a negative testing. Understood, guys, what is the difference between a positive and a negative testing? So, on a high level, the positive testing means whatever the points they mentioned in the requirement, if it is working or not. Okay, if it is working or not, we call it as a positive testing. And a negative testing means if we are not doing things as mentioned in the requirement document and trying in a different way and check whether it is working or not, which we call it as a negative testing. So the positive testing means checking how it was designed. The negative testing means checking in a different area, which we call it as a negative testing. That's the basic difference between these two, positive and as well as a negative testing. Am I clear for you guys with respect to this positive testing and a negative testing, or do you have any doubts for me on this?
Yes, Surendra, I got it.
Okay, so positive testing and a negative testing basically. That's the most important thing that we need to consider. So here, while writing down the further activities, you will be dealing with both the positive and as well as the negative testings. Okay, while writing down the further test cases, we are gonna define both the positive and as well as the negative test cases in a real world. Okay, in the real world, you will write down a positive and a negative test case. Of course, we will study about what is a positive test case and what exactly a negative test case in a further sessions. Okay, the positive test case and a negative test case that we will study in a further sessions. So, ultimate chunk out over here is in the black box testing, we as a testers will test the application in both the positive and as well as a negative testing. And on a high level, I can say that developers will do only the positive testing on that particular application. Okay, developers will does only the positive testing on that particular application. Clear, guys? Everyone?
Yeah,
Okay, perfectly all right. So this is all about the whole chunks about the white box testing and a black box testing. And of course, we need to study couple more points about these white box and as well as the black box testing. So just give me a second, guys. Just give me a second.